Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Joel Schwartz. I'm a functional neurologist and I practice in Monroe Township, New Jersey. Today I want to talk to you about the activities of walking and running and their relationship to lower back pain. Now obviously walking and running are very popular fitness activities. They're very good for you in so many ways for your cardiorespiratory system and your joints. But in some people they tend to cause lower back pain. And it gets to the point where some people may even consider giving up walking or running because they see there's a definite relationship between walking and running and having lower back pain thereafter. And obviously this is a very frustrating situation, having to give up such an important and fun activity. So what I'd like to do today is give you some advice, some immediate things that you can put into practice after and before you run that can positively impact your back and make it so that you have less pain after you walk and run. So I'm going to talk to you about those things. And I'm also going to give you some other interventions or things that you might use for people who don't have success for these types of interventions that I'm going to tell you that you can specifically do right now. I'm going to outline a program for them in terms of what types of exams they need to get and what types of treatments would be helpful for alleviating lower back pain in runners or walkers. Now, the information that I'm going to tell you today is based upon knowledge and experience. And the knowledge is really the knowledge of the scientific community's understanding of the mechanics of the lower extremity and lower back and the neurology of the lower extremity and lower back during the gait cycle. I'm also going to use the knowledge that I've attained during my 24 years of practice as a chiropractic physician and functional neurologist. I've treated many people with lower back pain and gait problems. And also, I used to be a distance runner myself. I ran about 50 miles a week, although that was a number of years ago. And so I do have personal experiences in the activities of walking and running. So let's start off by talking about walking, and then we'll get into running. So walking is just a perfect activity for you neurologically and orthopedically for many reasons. Using the spine model here, when you when you walk, your lower back joints rotate just slightly side to side, and the sacroiliac joints rotate as well. So these motions that you get in your spine lubricate the joints, okay, and they're very good for the health of your joints. In addition, the joints have in them nerves called mechanoreceptors. Those mechanoreceptor nerves send impulses up to the brain, and those impulses can potentially contribute to reducing the sensations of pain that one experiences. So really good neurologically. In addition, walking is controlled by nerves that specifically are in the spinal column called central pattern generators, which really can almost control walking by themselves without any input from other parts of the nervous system. They create a very rhythmic and natural walking motion. Those central pattern generators do. So it's a great neurological activity, walking is. In addition, when you walk, you always have one foot on the ground, at least 1 foot, right? So that means the shock absorption that occurs when you take that step down is pretty minimal. There's not a lot of force transmitted up through your lower extremity and into your spine, so very little negative effects to the lower back. In contrast, running, both feet at a certain time are in the air. And then when you land with your entire body weight on 1 foot. And that creates much more impact and somewhat of a jarring motion that can go into the spine and give a negative effect to the intervertebral discs here in the lower back, which are so important as a cause of lower back pain. So that's one negative aspect, I suppose, of running. But running does have all the other positive aspects that walking has. It stimulates the joints, lubricating them. stimulates mechanoreceptors, potentially inhibiting pain sensation, and is controlled neurologically by the central pattern generators. So it's a very rhythmic and natural motion. So running is a great activity as well. Now let's talk about some interventions that you can use. Some advice I can give you right now that has the potential in a lot of you to decrease the amount of pain you have after walking and running. Okay, the first thing is parameters. And you've probably heard of this because people have told you, or doctors have told you, don't do too much too soon. Well, specifically what we mean by that is 3 parameters, okay? How frequently you walk or run, how long you walk or run for each session, and how fast you walk or run during each session. And a good rule of thumb is to take one of those parameters and to not increase it by more than 10% in any given week. So say, for example, your duration is a half an hour each time you walk or run. Don't increase that by more than 10% on any given week. Okay, so that's parameters. The next thing is shoes, and I'm sure you've heard about this too. It's important to have good walking and running shoes when you do these activities. Specifically, the heel counter needs to be strong, so it prevents excessive motion in your heel, which can cause more rotation up through your foot, your heel, into your knee, into your hip, and into your lower back, potentially causing instability and lower back pain. So shoes are very important. Terrain is important as well. I'm sure you heard it's good to walk and run on a relatively soft or compliant surface. So the sidewalk is the most jarring, it's the hardest surface, the cement. The street is a little bit more giving, but ideally you want to try to walk on maybe a dirt path that's fairly even, not unlevel, or a barcode chip trail. These are very good because they allow more compliance. One more thing I'll add about terrain, which really not directly to the amount of impact, but it's whether you're going uphill or downhill, okay? Just consider if you're running uphill a lot or downhill a lot, you're putting a little bit of a tilt into your spine. So say, for example, if you're walking uphill continually, that little bit of tilt actually, after a long walk, can be very stressful on some of your intervertebral discs in your lower back. I have a lot of people who hike, and when they go up hills, okay, it hurts when they're done with the hike. So consider that too. If you're having pain, you want to try to walk on a more of a level surface. Okay, but I'm sure most of you have heard of these 3 things I've talked about, the parameters, shoes, and terrain up until this point, but what you haven't heard about is specifically what I'm going to tell you now about stretching. And I don't mean that you just should stretch or stretch a lot. What I mean specifically is you should stretch in a certain direction. So let me first talk about what happens when you get done walking or running. When you're walking or running, as I showed you, your joints rotate in your lower back. And what that does is stretch things out a lot in your lower back. So if you go immediately after walking or running, and then you go ahead and sit slouched like this being the back of your body and this being the front, if you sit slouched immediately after walking and running, this further deforms and stresses your intervertebral disc. And this can be a huge cause of lower back pain. So make sure when you get done with your activity that you sit up straight with your back arched. That's very important. Okay, so we were going to talk also about stretching. And I said that it's not the amount of stretching, it's the direction. Now, when you stretch for your lower back or stretch your hamstrings, you can stretch in one of 2 directions basically. You can stretch basically forward or backward, and some people stretch a little bit side to side too, but basically most stretches involve forward bending of the spine or backward bending of the spine. And that would be either lying down or standing up. Now consider what most people do when they either stretch before they run or after they run. What most people will do is stand up and bend forward and touch their toes, or sit up, reach forward to stretch their hamstrings, or put their foot up on some support and lean forward to stretch their hamstrings. Consider that all these involve forward bending of the spine, which can be a very harmful activity to the intervertebral disc in your spine. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that you consider, instead of forward bending, doing more backward bending activities. Standing up and bending backward like this, or laying down and bending backward. And this would be called in yoga the cobra pose, or it's just called in some orthopedic circles spinal extension, okay, prone extension. So these types of exercises for some people can be the really key element that prevents lower back pain after walking or running. If they just do these exercises, it's extremely important. So go ahead and take a look at some of the other videos that I put up on my channel, because it goes into specifically these types of exercises in more detail. One thing I would tell you is that for certain people, maybe about 5 or 10% of the population who have lower back pain, if they have sciatica as well, severe sciatica, or a certain degree of spinal stenosis, sometimes backward bending exercises are contraindicated. And I go into that in other videos as well. But for the great many people, bending backward is a very healthy activity. One other thing I just thought of also I should tell you is that, of course, you got to stretch your hamstrings, right? So how would you stretch your hamstrings without bending forward? Well, lying on your back like this and using a belt to pull your foot or your leg up, or a towel, or just bringing your leg up with your hands is the best way to stretch your hamstrings. It's very effective, and it puts no stress on the lower back. So that's hamstring stretching. And that's stretching in general. Bending backward is something definitely to consider. It has a huge effect on a lot of people. Okay, so let's say now at this point that you've tried all these things that I've talked about as first interventions, but you're still having back pain after walking or running. So what we'll need to do at that point is take what I call a deeper look. And what I use specifically is a method called orthopedic exercise, the brain-body method. And this is a very detailed neurological and orthopedic evaluation of your system. And it's very targeted to the specific movement that you're having a problem with. So in case of running and walking, what we're concerned is the orthopedic and neurological systems that control the lower extremity and the lower back, the biomechanics, as well as the neurological systems that control those movements and the gait cycle. So we have devised certain exam procedures. Basically, they're just orthopedic tests and movement pattern analysis, and a detailed neurological exam that targets specifically the structures we need to look at. And from that, we can formulate a treatment plan of specific rehabilitation exercises that can correct the orthopedic or neurological problems that are causing your pain during walking or running. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to tell you today. Now, I hope you've gotten something from this presentation. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to just type it below here on the YouTube channel or on my website, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can with an answer. I would also encourage you to look at some of my other videos on my YouTube channels, because they go into other topics that are related to this, specifically backward bending exercises, okay, the orthopedics of the lower extremity, specifically the hip. I have some videos on that, and also the neurology of pain. Yeah, I go into that a lot. It's very important to understand really how we perceive pain and the brain's involvement in the perception of pain, because the brain really determines whether we're going to experience pain or not. So take a look at those other videos. Some of them are already out on the channels, and some of them are soon to be out. And if you like the video, please give me a like. Click the like button below, and you can also click subscribe. By subscribing, you'll be able to get the videos that I put out, and I'll be putting out several of them in the next few weeks, and you'll be able to get them immediately and take a look at those as well. So thanks very much for walking and running, and thanks for listening to this presentation.